Hi, my name is Gita Passi. I am 24 years old. I am an Indian American woman currently living in New Jersey. I am a digital artist and designer professionally, and I just finished up an incredible internship at a company called Marathon Digital in New York City, and they do the social media for a handful of the Broadway shows, including like Hadestown and Hamilton, and Dear Evan Hansen. I did my undergrad at Penn State, and I majored in digital art and media design, and I have a photography minor.
In the early 20th century, only 20% of all women worked outside of the home, with only 5% of them being married women. But when World War I began in 1914, women were recruited to take the places of men who were being sent to war. Women were taking over career fields that were typically male-driven, such as bank clerks, gas fitters, the police force, and fire services. The employment rate for women increased between 37 and 46% by 1918. Although women were performing the same tasks as men and proving their capabilities, they were paid much less and not treated as equals. Do you think that men and women are considered equal in the workplace nowadays? Why or why not?
So I didn't want to speak on this without having any information, so I did a quick Google search and I was looking at the number of CEOs that were male versus female, and out of 1,000 of the world's largest companies, I found that only 6% of the company's CEOs were women and the other 93% were male. And also, you're more likely to have 72% more likely to have a CEO named David than a CEO who is a woman just in general. And of course, the gender pay gap, since 2022, women earned 17% less than men on average, and women earn just 82 cents for every dollar a man makes. And women of color are among the lowest paid workers in rural areas, and there's a bunch of other statistics for that. I feel like that just answers the question. You could go on, you could write pages and pages, but I think, yeah, that's where we are.
In the 18th and 19th centuries, women were not allowed to vote, had no property rights, and were paid only a fraction of what men earned. Women were not allowed to enter professional careers such as medicine or law, and they were not allowed to attend college or university. Husbands had legal power over their wives and were allowed to imprison and beat them. They controlled finances, were favored in the eyes of law, including child custody. Wives were essentially their husband's property and had no rights of their own once married. Women had to ask their husbands for permission and were not allowed to open bank accounts. Do you feel that we as a society have made much progress when it comes to women's rights and equality? Why or why not?
And just about women's rights in general, I think we've come a long way as a society in just 100 years ago, but not quite enough given that it's 2024. It's just so nuanced, socially, politically, economically, and there's so many sectors of life. I could talk for like hours, but things that came to mind were female representation in entertainment, film, TV. There are harmful tropes and harassment that occurs in Hollywood and these kinds of environments for actresses. Reproductive right issues are still not where they need to be, and that is a whole can of worms. I think that as an artist, it's important to speak through your work to connect with the world. Women, men, non-binary people, share experiences, get attention, tell stories, and raise voices.
42% of women say they have faced discrimination on the job in the United States based on their gender. 53% of employed Black women say they have experienced gender discrimination at work, and 22% of Black women report having been passed over for the most important assignments because of their gender. In 2022, women earned 82% of what men earned, which was only a 2% increase over the last 20 years. In other parts of the world, young women are kept from school, forced to marry, and in some cases are not even allowed to show anything but their eyes. Have you ever experienced discrimination based on your gender, and if so, can you describe that experience?
Discrimination based on gender, I've not experienced anything like earth-shattering that I can remember, but it's all about microaggressions. So like I've had experiences of like authority figures looking to men to do like physical heavy lifting. I'm not sure if this counts, but hearing the way that male supervisors speak to female coworkers, it's subtle, but it's still relevant. It can be condescending and impatient at times. And I always think like their tone would be so vastly different if they were speaking to male coworkers. Also, the way women are spoken to on dating apps is absolutely insane. I think people just like completely out themselves for how they view women. Like, congratulations, you just told on yourself. I also think it's important to note that just because I haven't experienced something myself doesn't mean that it's not happening to others, and that's also relevant to like racial issues and other minority groups. It's important to like raise those voices and experiences when we do hear them.
Young, Low-income and minority women are more likely to become victims of domestic violence and rape. 1 in 5 women will experience rape or attempted rape while in college, and less than 5% of these attacks will be reported. American Indian women are victimized at a rate more than double that of women of other races. Of all of the murdered women in the United States, 1/3 of them were killed by their partners. Around 15% of women have been stalked at some point, and 21% of young girls report being bullied online. Do you feel safe or comfortable as a young woman in the United States? Why or why not?
I do not feel comfortable as a young woman in the United States or safe. I actually just had a recent experience where me and my best friend were followed and harassed in New York City in plain daylight in Soho, and our safety was definitely in question during that. It was one of the scariest things I've dealt with to date. I've heard plenty of stories, but having something like that actually happen to you, like, completely changes your perspective. But my friend, another story, she was just physically harassed on a night out recently, so I heard about that. I don't feel comfortable taking a walk at night or even sometimes going to my car in a dark parking lot. You just keep hearing about things and you can never be, you can never be too safe, and it's just crazy that we have to think like that still, especially young women.